Oh my gosh. So yeah, and I think we were all just in shock that it had happened so fast.
Yes. From a planned home birth and struggling about who you are wanting there at your birth to an accidental unassisted home birth, Allie's story is unique and crazy, and I'm so excited for you to hear it. You're listening to the Fearless Mothering Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Schoenberger, and this is the show for moms who are looking at entering motherhood encouraged, enthusiastic, and most importantly, fearless. Today, we are welcoming on another special guest to share her birth story. Allie is from Tennessee in the United States, and she was someone who reached out wanting to share her story on the podcast. I absolutely loved this episode. I think that her story is unique and beautiful and a positive one for especially first-time moms who are considering a home birth. So grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and let's get into this. Welcome, Allie. Thank you so much for being willing to share your birth story on the Fearless Mothering Podcast. So why don't we just get into it? Why don't you share a little bit about who you are, maybe how you found the podcast, and then we'll get into your pregnancy and things like that.
Yes, sounds good. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be on your show and be able to share my story and hopefully help other moms, as listening to positive birth stories really helped me.
Amazing.
Yeah, a little bit about me. So I live in Tennessee. I'm originally from California. I moved to Tennessee three, almost 3 years ago now. Gosh. Yes, I'm a realtor, so which gives me so much flexibility with being a new mom now too. I can work as little or as much as I want. So that's been a really big blessing for my husband and I as well. So yeah, I'm a
Amazing.
first-time mom. Yes.
Okay, that was going to be my next question.
Yep.
Do
Yes.
you have a little boy or a little girl?
A little girl, her name is Reese.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yes, and
I
she is
love
about to
that.
be 10 months old next week, actually.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow, you've crossed the 6 month mark. How are you
Yes,
feeling?
we made it. Oh my gosh. So I mean, every day is, different. I feel like you're constantly learning and it's just so cool to see her learn new things and just
Yeah.
hit the milestones. And it's being a mom is the best job I've ever had. So
Yeah. And that first 12 months, you truly see so much growth. Like, I don't think we see that kind of growth after that. Like, they just go from these little blobs to like
mhm,
full
yep.
human beings who try and do
Yes.
everything on their own. Yeah, so much change in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I'm assuming we're going to hear the birth story of Reese today then. So why don't
Yes.
you share a little bit about your pregnancy? Was it complicated, uncomplicated? Were you guys trying to get pregnant? All of that.
Yeah, so it's a little backstory from my for my pregnancy. My husband and I actually didn't know if we'd be able to have kids. My
Wow.
husband did have testicular cancer. Oh gosh, how many years ago is that now? It might have been like 6 years ago. So we weren't sure. We didn't know what it would be like for us. And we got married in November of 2022. Of course, we had the plan of, oh, we want to wait a year.
Yeah, of
But
course.
God always has a better plan than our own.
Yes.
So. My husband and I got baptized in May of 2023, and we
Okay.
ended up getting pregnant a little over a month later after.
Wow.
So yeah, so I found out I was pregnant in July of 2023. My pregnancy was very normal.
Yeah.
I saw a midwife. Obviously, I was having a planned home birth. I saw a chiropractor. Gosh, why can't I talk?
No worries. You're good.
Regularly. I think I was 16 weeks when I started seeing the chiropractor, and that helped so much. So I'm a huge advocate for that. Um, and yeah, I mean, I couldn't have asked for probably a better pregnancy, honestly. I felt very
Amazing.
fortunate and blessed. So,
Awesome. So what was like the end of pregnancy? Because I feel like when you have good pregnancies, it's great and like honestly
mhm.
such a blessing. Like in
Yeah.
reality, it's such a blessing.
Yeah.
How was the like last few weeks before having your daughter?
Yeah, so I ended up having her at 38 weeks in a couple days. So she
Okay.
surprised us. It's so funny. So my husband and I, we were not ready. Like we
Yeah.
had all the birth supplies at the house, but nothing was set up.
Yeah.
yet. And I had been telling my husband, hey, it's like we're 38 weeks now. We need to have it all ready. And we had the birth pool in our room, but it wasn't blown up, obviously. But
Okay.
that was the only thing that was pretty much there. Otherwise, all the supplies were in like a box in a separate room. So I just, yeah, so leading up to it, I still felt great. I was preparing, me being a first time mom, I wasn't expecting to have her any earlier than, the due date.
Uh-huh.
So I was expecting to go past that. So she surprised us,
Yeah.
you know,
Amazing. So
yes.
you were like
So
enjoying the end of pregnancy and then
yeah,
she
yeah,
came.
no, yes, exactly.
Good.
No, it was, yeah, I was feeling good still. Yeah, I was just no expectations of her coming early, any
Yeah.
earlier. So,
That's such a good place to be in, is like
mhm.
ready to go over and then have a baby come early. It's a good place to be. So
And I
why don't you
think,
tell us about early labor?
yeah, absolutely. And something I want to talk about in pregnancy that I guess was hard for me. It was more emotional, but
Mm.
um, deciding who I was going to have there was
Mm.
really hard because I had my mom, my sister, and my mother-in-law and grandmother-in-law. And so I kept going back and forth because it was going to be my mom and my sister most likely. And then it came to having maybe all four of them. And I kept going back and forth, I don't want to feel watched. I don't.
Yeah.
And I think for me, my mom was the hardest one with having the home birth with her. She didn't really understand it.
Yeah.
Um, so feeling the support on that end, and if I knew she was going to be there, I didn't want her fear of it to get into my head or anything. So I went back and forth, and I was going to eventually just tell everyone, I think, No, I'm going to have everyone come after.
Yeah.
Um, so you'll see what ends up happening of
Yeah.
what happened with that and how God really he heard my prayers and
Yeah.
how that ended up working out. But that was such a big stressor for me during my pregnancy. I will
Yeah.
say definitely that was a huge, a huge thing.
Yeah,
So,
that's where I feel like that's very shared because it's such
yeah.
an intimate place. Like as a doula, I
Hmm.
often remind people, I'm like, okay, like aside from obviously your like OB or midwife,
Hmm.
when you look beyond that, it's like who's in the room? Who's in the room when you're intimate with your partner,
Hmm. Just
right?
us.
And
Yeah.
like if you were to be like super uncomfortable with someone potentially walking into your house, not even into your bedroom, but into your house while
Hmm.
that's happening,
Yeah.
then that person, like, which is pretty much everyone. Like, I don't know
Hmm.
about you, but I don't want my mom walking in. But for
Yeah.
me, as an example, like
Yeah.
I would be probably a little less uncomfy if it was my sister,
Yeah.
right? Like I would be like still like, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
But that's
Yes.
usually what I remind is like it's very intimate and like
Hmm.
your whole body is going to be out there for the world to see. And so
Yeah.
your world, you have to be really reflective of who you want there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had
So,
talked to my midwives at one of my appointments about that, and they said one of the midwives had her own experience, and she said, I did feel watched. She said,
yeah,
so just yes. She's like, I get it. She's like, but you got to do what's best for you. And
totally.
yeah.
I'm excited to hear how this plays out.
Yes. So, okay, early labor. So a couple days, so she was born on March 12th. And a couple days before that, I do remember my discharge kind of changing and having some mild cramping, but not thinking anything of it. I was like, okay, maybe my body's just kind of gearing up for labor. And then March 11th, that morning, I saw the chiropractor and I got a prenatal massage. It was going to be like the
Mm.
last one, getting myself all comfy before I knew she would
Yeah.
probably come. So yeah, I did that morning, and then I was hanging out next door at my in-laws. I remember having ice cream with them, and we had dinner, and then went home. I think that night around 8. It was 8 or 8:30. I went to bed around 9:30. Woke up at 10:30. Went to the bathroom, and like it was nothing. And
Hmm.
had I not looked in the toilet, for some reason I did, and my mucus plug was in there.
Yeah.
I was like, I think that's it.
Yeah.
So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, no big deal. Like, don't think anything of it. Just go back and lay down. Because my midwife had said too, like it could grow back, and I was like 38 weeks. So I'm like, no way.
Hmm.
So I go back and lay down and I couldn't go back to sleep. I literally started cramping like right away. So I was
Yeah.
like, I think it's all right. Let's just see what happens. So I didn't wake my husband up right away because I was like, if it's nothing, I don't want to, you know how it
Yeah.
is, especially being
Yeah.
your first time mom. Everyone tells you, yeah, it might take a while or it will take a while and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So, I get up and I just start walking around the house and then I think I drink some like coconut water and stuff. I got my birth ball. That yoga ball was my best friend for the entire labor. I love that thing. So, yeah, I just walked around and then I noticed the contractions started to get closer together. They weren't intense by any means. They were probably like, I would say, period cramps. So I think at that after that was and that was like a couple hours of doing that. And then I remember taking a bath in our spare bathroom. And then I started noticing like the bloody show coming too. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, this is the real thing. Um, so literally though, just ended up sitting on the birth ball, just kind of taking them as they came. And then it was about 1 in the morning was when I woke up my husband. I was like, all right, I should probably wake him up. So I
Yeah.
woke him up and I think it was in denial too. He's like, really? No
It's so
way.
early.
Yes, like he was, yes, so shocked. And mind you, again, in his mind, he's probably like, oh no, nothing is ready.
Yeah.
Like none of our birth supplies are ready, nothing. So I think it took him a little bit to be like, oh, okay, this is really happening. Um, so he went downstairs to like try and clean up and all that kind of stuff. So because I was doing fine at that point, just kind of doing my thing in the dark. It was quiet. And I had
Yeah.
a whole playlist of songs like prepared. I had the Christian hypnobirthing
Ooh, love
had,
that.
had
Yeah.
that all prepared, right? And so I had all that and never really ended up listening to it.
Yeah.
It's in silence. Like
Yeah.
it was crazy. Um, and so mainly on the yoga ball and then what came around? Oh, so I noticed either being on that ball or squatting, really were the main positions that were comfortable for me to manage the contractions.
Mm.
And obviously breathing. Um, and then around, I think I kind of, and again, your sense of time is so off during
Oh
those
yeah.
moments. So I was back and forth between like I did get in the shower at one point. I got into the bath again at another point. Never blew up the pool. I noticed the water was helped, but I think when I ended up sitting in the bathtub the second time I went in there, it wasn't as comfortable. And it may have been because
Yeah.
it was hot. Our bathtubs are harder. So it just
Hmm.
wasn't doing much for me. And they were still manageable. At that point, I still never felt like they were unbearable.
Mm.
And I think too, just the breathing, that was a huge thing for me. And so around 5, oh, so I did have a doula. My doula was my neighbor.
Okay.
Yes, my doula
Nice.
was my neighbor. So we call, and I knew my midwife had told me to like call me kind of when you think things are, getting closer or the real thing. So I hadn't
Yeah.
called her yet. And so I called the doula first because I knew that she was also a substitute teacher. So I was
Okay.
like, "Hey, I don't know, because she was taking like the week of or a couple weeks before, or no, like the week before my birth, I think off or something. Well, I thought she was still going to be working. So I was like, I probably should let her know in case she
Yeah.
has to be at school. So around 5, we call her and just let her know, hey, heads up, like I'm in labor. Whenever you want to head over, I'm doing fine right now. Um, and she was like, okay, yeah. And so I think because we woke her up out of her sleep. So then she calls back at like 5:30. She's like, wait, just confirm, like you're in labor. How far are the contractions? I was like,
Yeah.
they're pretty close together. Like, I mean, they're like 3 to 5 minutes apart, but they were never lasting a minute long. And that
Okay.
rule they say,
Yes.
the hour for, minute long. They never got to a minute long.
Yeah.
Even when I did it counting and when my husband did it, they
Yeah.
maybe got to 40 seconds, maybe 45 at most.
Okay.
And so I'm like, okay. Or she's like, okay, I got to take my son to school, and I'll come over after that. Okay, that's totally fine. So then just keep kind of doing my thing, laboring on that ball. And then I went around, this was 7:30. Then 7:30 came around and I thought about the toilet. I had read books and saw, on all the
Yeah.
places, like the toilet is a great place to try. So
Yes.
I went to go sit on the toilet to sit reverse or whatever and had a contraction, literally squat down and my water broke. So
Yep.
I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. All right. Now I'll probably call the midwife. So I called my husband. He was downstairs, obviously trying to get everything ready. And I said, hey, you need to come up here and we'll call the midwife to let her know. So we called her, let her know, hey, my water just broke and I've been in labor since 10:30 last night. And she asked about the whole how far or the contractions and all that kind of stuff and wanted to
Yeah.
hear me. Um and again, I wasn't screaming in agony or,
No.
so I
Yeah.
think she thought there's still some time. And so she was like, okay, well, we have a mom we got to go see real quick and then we'll come to you. So literally not, I don't even know after that phone call. It could have been 30 minutes because then that would put us at 8 o'clock ish. I started to feel like I had to poop.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I was like, this is intense. I said, it's happening. I was like, I couldn't control it at all.
Yeah.
It felt like I was just gonna just poop. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
she's coming. I knew that. So I checked myself. I was like, okay, let me see if I can feel anything. And I
Yeah.
did. I was like, okay, I think that's her head. And we didn't know the gender at the time. We did a
Right. Oh,
and
okay.
so I say her head, but yeah, I felt the head and I was like, okay. I was like, you need to call her back.
Like
So
there's
I
a
was like,
baby coming right
yeah, I
now.
was like, you need to call her back. So he called her back and said, hey, like she's feeling like she has to push and it's like it's happening. She was like, okay, well, we're not gonna make it in time then. And she told me again to feel like if I could feel the head, and I was like, yeah. And so I know she asked my husband, do you want me to stay on the phone while we're with her? And he's like, no, it's okay. We can't like I can't be on the phone while this is happening. So
Yeah.
my doula literally showed up at 8:15 when I was
Wow.
convinced of like literally I know she's the baby's coming. And um I want to I don't even know how many minutes after that was. And just had the instinct to like squat down and I knew her head was coming and birthed her head. And then just instinctually I went to my hands and knees and I remember my doula like saying, come on, you gotta like push. And I was like, I don't have a contraction, like I can't push. Like just wait,
Yeah.
give me a second. And the next one came and I gave I think a tiny push with that one and she just slid right out.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. So yeah, and I think we were all just in shock that it had happened so fast.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, and obviously we found out she was a girl, and I wasn't even shocked that she was a girl. So I think I
Right.
now knew that she
Yeah.
was gonna be a girl. So
Wow.
yes, it was just me, my husband, and my doula. That was
Wow.
yes, yes.
And so what time did your midwives arrive? Like they came to you, right?
So my daughter was born at 8:45. That's the time we think, because I think there was a time lapse, like where we forgot, like, oh, we gotta
Yeah.
see what time it is. I think they got there within, it might have been 30 to 40 minutes later,
Okay.
I would say. Because I never ended up seeing like the birth chart after or anything, so I can't remember exactly what time
Right.
they got there. But so we let kept her attached obviously to
Yeah.
the cord, and they got me to the bed, and I just kind of hung out with her
Yeah.
for a little bit,
Yeah.
and so we waited. And then yeah, she was fine.
Uh,
Um, yeah, and so yeah, so total from when start to finish, it was 10 about 10 hour labor.
wow.
Yes, it was it was crazy. So
So
no
what?
one,
Yeah,
oh,
sorry,
no,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I was just
I
saying, so that's kind of how it's funny where I
yeah.
was worried about who was going to be there, and it was just me, my husband, and my doula.
You didn't have time to call anyone.
No, 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 it worked out just the way God
Yeah.
intended it to. So,
Wow. And isn't it cool though how it can be such a huge stress for you? And
mhm,
then, yeah, like he just has a different plan and it's going to happen the way he wants it to happen.
yes,
Yeah. Oh, wow.
really.
So what was your brain doing when you were like, that's a head? I feel that head right there. Like I would love to know.
I think it was almost like it just didn't feel real in a way.
Yeah.
Like it was so crazy. Like I think even in the beginning of labor, I'm like, no way. Like it's too early. Like there's no way I'm in labor. And I think it was just then realizing, no, the baby's coming. But I got this. Like, but it
Oh,
was so
yeah.
intense. Like that's how I can explain it. It took my breath away when get like that last part of it, with her coming out is just pure intensity, and it took my breath away. Like I remember being like, oh, like
Yeah.
just making that noise.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably at the point where I was like the loudest. But it was once she was out, it was gone. Like
Hmm. The
intensity.
biggest relief ever.
Yes, it was just done. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like it was, yeah, it was just,
Yeah.
it was crazy.
Amazing. So did you do any like childbirth education before? Like, did you take birth classes? What did that look like? Like, I'm in Canada, so obviously our like healthcare systems look very different, but I would love to know
Yes.
what kind of prep you were doing.
Yeah. So I did Karen Welton's class, the pain-free childbirth.
Cool.
I did her course. And then I just read like quite a few different books, like Birth Without Fear.
Love that
Um,
one.
Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. I
Yeah.
think that's what it's called. I read that one. So a lot of it was books, and then listening to the Christian hypnobirthing app before labor, prayer, a lot of
Yeah.
prayer too. I just knew that that was what I wanted was a home birth and for it to be peaceful um and
Uncomplicated. Yeah.
yes, yeah,
Wow. So
yeah.
you put in the work though. Like you did a lot of reading, you like prepped yourself for this labor. You didn't just wing it.
No, not at all. No, I
Yeah.
definitely prepared myself. Now, my husband, on the other hand, I
Yeah.
think he kind of winged it. But and that was what was funny is God just threw him in the fire. I remember him saying too, "Well, I'll stay by your head," like during labor or whatever. And, nope, you had to be down there.
Yeah.
So my doula ended up catching her, but my husband was right in there, so
Yeah.
he saw everything, and I was like, "See, God threw you in there for a
Yeah.
reason."
You didn't get an
You know?
option, honey.
Nope, nope, too bad. So yes,
Wow.
but oh my gosh, he was so proud and just so I think he was just in shock and so amazed that,
Yeah.
so
That's amazing. So
yes.
going from that experience to like immediate postpartum, so having that home birth that you were wanting,
Mhm.
how do you find that birth set you up for postpartum?
Oh gosh, I feel like it helped a lot. The one thing after, so once my midwives did get there and they wanted me to go to, or they asked, "Do you want to take a shower to rinse off?" Let's do that. So then just the hormone rush and the probably losing blood as well because I did tear. I
Mm,
had a second-degree tear, and I ended up fainting like three different times. So,
okay.
and it wasn't anything like too dramatic, but they just said, we got to get you back to the bed and then just rest, eat, and we'll give you like electrolytes.
Yeah,
And so that ended up helping because I had to get to the toilet. They wanted you to pee too. So I had to
of
make
course.
sure I went pee. But yeah, so that was something that happened after the fact. That, obviously isn't always ideal, but it was okay.
Yeah.
And then yeah, so I feel like I think I was in love with my birth experience. I felt I had such a great experience. I think it definitely helps going into postpartum and I felt high.
Yeah.
Like I remember reading about moms talking about that it's like euphoric high feeling after birth and I
Hmm.
definitely say I could felt that. I could feel that.
Yeah.
And I felt it lasted like hours after. Like I couldn't go to
Yeah.
sleep. And
Yeah.
even though I need to sleep, like Reese went to sleep for probably 4 hours right after birth, and I was up and awake, and
Yeah.
I
Chatty,
was like,
happy.
yeah, yep, exactly. So, yeah, no, yeah, it definitely set me up in mentally and emotionally a lot like
Wow.
healthier and a better mindset for sure.
That's amazing. So she's now 10 months old.
Hmm.
What has been your favorite milestone that she has hit up until this point?
Oh, that's so hard.
I know, but I
Uh,
ask it often because I like to hear.
yes. Oh my gosh, favorite. I think. Oh my gosh. That's such a tough
I
question.
know, and I always catch moms off guard when I ask
Yes,
it because
no,
I'm like, this is going to take a minute.
it's a good question. I think for like finally, like once she gets out of that lumpy stage, recognizing us, like
Yeah.
my husband and I, and recognizing me as her mom. And also just, I mean, I guess that it's going to be more than one, but just her starting to babble and learn the sounds. It's so cool to hear her little voice.
Yeah.
I think that's
Oh,
so cute. One of my
yeah.
favorites.
That is the best. Like
Yeah.
the best piece of advice that I got because I remember feeling really like overwhelmed postpartum
Hmm.
with just
Yeah.
how much they demanded because they literally relied on mom for like
Yes.
sustenance, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
And I remember, I can't remember if it was something I read, something someone told me, postpartum, I was a little bit
Hmm.
fuzzy, but
Hmm.
was that for the first 6 months, your baby doesn't realize that they're separate from you.
Yes, I have heard that. Oh my
And
God.
when I heard that, it just like healed the piece of me that was like, oh man, they need so much. And then when they
Yeah.
start to recognize the difference between like
Mhm.
mom and dad, like this milestone that you're saying, it's so cool to be like,
Yeah.
they actually see me. They can
Yes.
see me and see me as something separate than themselves.
Yes,
Yeah, really
definitely.
cool. So, what's a milestone that you're looking forward to in the future?
Mm. I would say to be able to have conversations with her,
Yeah,
like just to see how her little personality is just going to develop and be
yeah.
able to talk, like her to talk back to us. I think I just love that. So,
Yes,
yeah.
that's a good one. I find that's often when I'm talking to moms. they're just like, I just can't wait to get to know them.
Yes,
And it's really
yes.
beautiful and such a like a human thing to desire.
Yeah.
And then of course, the very last question that I always like to ask
Mhm.
is what piece of advice do you have for a first time mama?
Oh, with
I also
birth or
catch you
just
off
in
guard.
general?
You could do
Yeah.
both if you want. If you have one in general and then one birth related, you can do both for sure.
Okay. I mean, I guess if you have, if you want a certain birth experience to prepare yourself, but also know God is in control in that,
Mm,
we only have control over so much. But that regardless, it's going to be beautiful and you don't have to fear it the way that we're taught to fear it.
yeah.
Um, I think that's one of my biggest things is the fear aspect, is that it doesn't have to be scary.
Mm,
And there are things you can do to help like alleviate some of those fears when going into birth for sure. As for being a mom, gosh, don't be afraid to ask for help because
ooh,
obviously are days that there are days that are hard.
yes.
Um, it's not easy being a mom, and especially for me, breastfeeding was one of the struggles I had postpartum. Reese had a tongue tie, and they told me that the midwife assessed that right away and told me right away that she had one. And it almost like made me worried, like, oh, great, now I know I'm going to struggle because I knew that.
Yeah.
And so that was really hard. So she would latch here and there, but it was never, super, it was never super successful. And we did some feeding therapy and which actually ended up helping, but it just at that point I'd already started pumping and I was
Right. Yeah.
exhausted. So
Yeah.
I was just like, I think I've got the hang of pumping now. Like I think this is what I'm going to do for now. Cause she would scream at the
Mm-hmm.
breast, and it was stressful.
Yeah.
So I say that was one of the biggest postpartum struggles that I had was the breastfeeding. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, just don't be afraid to ask for help. That's one of the
Mm.
biggest ones as well.
Yeah. I
Um,
love those. Those are such good pieces of advice.
thanks.
I wish I would have like heard more of this stuff before I had
Yeah,
my first.
yeah,
Because it's just so necessary, especially to hear it from other moms who are like in it,
yes,
right? Like
yeah.
you're like 10 months into this.
Yes, I'm fresh.
Like, yeah. And but also
Yes.
like in it in a way that like I would say, like my youngest is 2. And I
Hmm.
can remember a lot and I can like try and offer pieces of advice.
Hmm.
But what I'm going to remember is going to be so like soft around the edges from the difficulties of like breastfeeding,
Right.
right? Or of pumping or of childbirth. Like it's going to be so fuzzy because of oxytocin and all these other things that help us forget.
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story today. Um, and just being willing to like get vulnerable and share a story that I think a lot of moms need to hear. One of like just positive experience, hope, and also different because not
Yes,
everyone
yes.
has their doula catch their baby.
Yes,
so,
I know, right?
so yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Thank you for listening to this episode. Like I said, Ali's story is one of positivity and honestly a crazy one that doesn't happen very often. Not having your midwives there to catch your baby can be something that is maybe a little nerve wracking, but she clearly handled it like a champ. I think my biggest takeaway from this episode was the fact that she did a lot of preparation, read a lot of books, and really had the mindset that she was going to have a successful home birth. If you loved this episode, please make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast. You can find it on Spotify and this episode on YouTube. And I would love to hear what your biggest takeaway was. Please feel free to leave it in the comments. If you are interested in sharing your birth story, you can find the link to jumping into our calendar in the show notes. And if you also loved this podcast episode and if you love the podcast as a whole, then you for sure will love to work with me. If you are expecting a little one, there's a few ways that you can work with Fearless Birthing. So the first one is to join our online course. This is a 9-unit, do-it-your-own pace Fearless Birth 101. And it is designed to help you feel encouraged and empowered and, of course, fearless in your birthing journey. So definitely grab it. In the description below, you'll also see a discount code for being a podcast listener that gives you 25% off the online course. If you're a local here in Spruce Grove, Stony Plain, or Greater Edmonton area in Canada, then you can also work with me one-on-one or with other Fearless Birthing doulas. You can find us www.fearlessbirthingdoula.com. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.